Go to investorthrive.com right now to check out some of our free training on how you can make money as a real estate investor, or schedule a time with me so we can chat about our mastermind mentorship and how we can help you learn how to wholesale nationwide and grow your business. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great today. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, anytime. So Investor Thrive Nation, we got a podcast. I got Rob Hanson. I got a good treat for you guys. He's been investing since the 80s, right, Rob?
Yes. Yeah, a long time. And, interestingly, I'm probably the only real estate investor you might ever meet that was forced into real estate investing, right? I didn't want to, I had no desire to be a real estate investor. And
Really?
my dad was a real estate agent. And, back then you couldn't just be a real estate agent because there wasn't enough money. There was no national MLS, or you couldn't find properties online. There was none of that, right?
Right.
And so each real estate agent controlled their own little neighborhood, 3 blocks, 4 blocks. And my dad was also an appraiser. So he comes to me one day. I had just gotten out of culinary school, right? And I was working as a chef in Atlantic City. And he comes to me and he's like, listen, like, I think back then I was making about 17 or 18,000 a year. Like, it was not a lot, right? It was, So he comes to me and he's like, listen, I have this property you can buy for like 15,000. You can put like 10,000 into it. You can sell for like 60,000. You have to buy it, right? So I'm like, begrudgingly, I bought it. And and I didn't know the construction end of it, so he was like, I have the guys for that, when we get to that point. So I buy the property. A couple days later, my dad has a heart attack and dies in his early 50s, right? So, so now, like, I'm in this house. I don't know what to do. And, the sharks come out, right? All these people came out and they were like, oh, yeah, I'm friends with your dad, like, and I'm going to do this job for you. So instead of making a lot of money, I made a little bit of money because a bunch of people took advantage of me. I didn't know what I was doing. But I made like half a year's salary when I should have made like a year and a half salary.
Wow.
So I was still like pretty excited about it, but I was like, oh man, like, where do I go from here? Like, what do I do? So I lost my safety net, and I lost my mentor, my guide, all at the same time, and my dad. So
That's rough.
yeah,
It must have been a tough time, huh? I'm sorry to hear about that. Yeah, it must have been rough.
it was rough, but you know what? Like, I look back on it, and like, I had to, I had to figure things out. Like, and as a young guy, like, I was in my very early 20s, like, I didn't have much life experience, and mindset was like something that really jumped out at me. And I started to look at people, right? And maybe you've done this too, is you go, well, like, I'm smarter than that guy, I work harder than that guy, and that guy's got 10 times what I have, and like, I don't know how he does it,
Done it. Been there, done that.
Yeah. So that's why I went down the path to figure out like what holds people back, and why, and we talked a little bit earlier, and right now, change is happening, and change, this change will be good for real estate investing. It will be good for deals. There'll be, a lot more deals out there. So, don't be afraid of this changing market would be my advice right now. I've been through a lot of cycles, like in the late 70s, early 80s, interest rates were like 18, 19%. It was crazy.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. So when they were that high, did they not have that much of an impact on people buying? Because I wasn't there, but I was just curious, like the houses probably were at 30, 60, 100,000. So the payments, even at 18%, probably weren't that high, but that might be relative because, I mean, it might've been a lot back then.
Yeah, it was. But here was the thing. And most people don't understand this about that time. Most homes were sold by way of FHA financing then, right? And because most of the buyers were people coming from out of World War II, right? So there was a lot of blue collar workers and lower paid white collar workers, right? So most of the money that was being lent was FHA financing. So instead of the sign saying for sale, the sign would say, FHA financing, which all those loans were assumable. And so, like, if the house was worth 30,000 and they owed 15,000 on it, was FHA, and it was at 5%, you could assume that 5% loan, and then you take the difference in the higher rate. So the blended rate wasn't as high as 18.
Mm,
And so, and that's the other thing, like interest rates, even though they're going to go up here, they're not going to stay up for long periods of time, because think about where the money is, right? And this is something that investors really need to understand is banks make money on lending, right? And so when interest rates stay high or stay low for a long time, right, they need these periods of refinance, right?
yes.
So like we might have 2 or 3 years of 6, 7, whatever, but then they're going to drop back down because the bank's going to refinance, they're going to make money, and that's how it goes. So don't, like, things change, they can change rapidly. It's my
Yeah,
opinion.
I actually have a friend of mine that's he owns a refinancing mortgage company, and he basically, when the rates go up, he doesn't have you know, well, no, is it when the rates go down? I think that's when the rates go down. He can refinance a lot of people out, but when they go out, he basically goes into real estate investing. He's like, now he like shifts his whole company. He starts knocking doors, having his team call, and then he gets properties. And then when the rates go down, then he can refinance people out. So I think I know exactly what you're saying. It's just, it sounds like they need that, right? For
Yeah.
his business, for the banks, for everything.
It's the cycle of opportunity, right? Like he's the prime example of it, because he doesn't really need to do real estate investing when the market's hot, like we've had for the last couple of years, and now if the market shifts, I mean, like, I think that we could have a replay of like 2008, which 2008 was a scary year for me, only because it was like doom and gloom was predicted till like 2014, right? And then the Obama administration put in this first time home buyer credit, which just turned things around relatively quickly.
Mhm.
And interest rates then were like 6.5. So, I mean,
That's true. Yeah, I was in high school in 2008, so I don't even really remember that. If it didn't really affect me because I didn't have a job at that time.
yeah.
Well, I
And
did have a job, but I was at Smoothie King, but that's not real estate.
I love Smoothie King, by the
Oh,
way.
same here. Where are you
But
from, by the way? Where do you live?
I'm in southern New Jersey near Philadelphia.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I grew up in Georgia, so
Yeah, I have friends in Atlanta, bunch of real estate agents and people in real estate companies and stuff like that. So
awesome.
nice spot.
So, I kind of want to go back, if it's okay, to when you went. You said your dad, he when he was a real estate agent, there was no MLS at the time, so you almost had to cultivate your neighborhood, like the people knew who you were. When you got into real estate, did you start using that strategy as well, like, hey, cultivating your area and having people know who you are? Like, what was did you go into like being an agent right after your first flip?
So no, I didn't right away. Actually, I had to get my real estate license at 18 so I could stay in the house and not pay rent, right?
Mhm.
But I never really, I never really used it.
Mhm.
And there was an MLS, but it was books, right? Like it was
Mhm.
like you got these books like every other week. And there was a trick in real estate, like, so you had to submit all your listings by Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday here. And so you held off your listings till Wednesday, and then you had like 2 weeks to sell your own listings. And
Oh,
so
man.
it was like, kind of the way some people do it now, they do coming soon or whatever. Um, so I, so like, I think that there's a natural progression in real estate, right? Like in real estate investing, you start off kind of wholesaling, and if you want to get in, wholesaling's the way to go. Wholesaling's hard work, right? Like,
It's a
and
grind.
so like right now I use all my own money. I don't use bank money, right? And most of the return, I'm like, okay, so this may sound weird, but I consider myself a real estate investing lion, right? And I don't mean I'm the king of the jungle. I
Yeah.
mean, like, a lion eats like once every 3 to 5 or 7 days, right?
Mhm.
So like I'm to this point where I don't have to do a lot of deals every week, 5 deals, 10 deals, whatever.
Mhm.
And like I just bought a property about 10 days ago. The return on investment on it is going to be 40% net, right, after everything. And like that's all that I buy anymore, because like, and I leverage the real estate community. I have a real estate license now. I leverage the real estate community. I let them They represent me on the buy, they represent me on the sell. I do pay the commissions there, and I get a lot more deals than I ever got pounding the pavement on my own. Not
Because
wholesale.
you're leveraging the community, you're leveraging agents and other things like that. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Because think of it, even in this time, like right now, you talk to a lot of real estate agents, they're struggling, right?
Yeah.
So if they got an estate deal, or they got a deal that was really a tough underwater deal, they're going to call me before it ever hits the market, and I'm going to get under contract on it, and hopefully before it ever hits the market.
And when you pay them, do you negotiate the commission, or is it just like, hey, I'll give you 3%, you bring me a deal? How is
I
that?
give them 3%, and then when I sell, I give them 3%. I figure like we're in a 2.5%. We've been in the 2.5% market lately, but like 3% to somebody who, like a lot of real estate agents, even the best ones, their numbers are down because there's just not inventory right now, which, so.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm curious, when you make that call to that agent, let's say you call someone brand new, but you obviously are the line. You can get it done. You're not just wholesaling these properties and just hoping to find a buyer. You want it, right? So how does that conversation go for you when you're like calling someone that's new, that maybe a lot of agents probably are distrusting, where they're like, I don't know if this is worth my time to talk. So how do you do it?
So basically, like, I don't call them, they call me, right?
Oh, really?
So yeah, so like I'll meet somebody somewhere or another, right? Like, and I'm in real estate, so I know a lot of the agents in my market, right? And I'll just say to them, hey, listen, like, I'm a buyer. If you ever have a deal that I can flip and I can make money, you represent me on the buy, and then you can represent me on the sell, and maybe you can double side it on that end, right? And if you're a struggling real estate agent and you need a commission and you want to double side something, maybe you're going to give me a call and give me first shot, because I'll close with it as soon as I can get title done, which is usually like 10 days. Depends.
When you say double side, you mean like where they represent you in the transaction, so they get the 3% as the listing agent and as the buyer's commission. They
Yes, they'll get 6%. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And so what did you call it? We call it double dipping. What do you call it?
Yeah, double siding. Yeah,
Double siding.
yeah.
So they could technically, double side on bringing you the deal, right? And then they could also double side on listing it, and also maybe even having a buyer at the end, maybe, right? So that's
right. Because like they are going to be with me on the project, and they're smart enough to stay in touch with me as I'm going along. And they're like, hey, they'll post something out on like social media saying, hey, I'm going to have this property coming up in this neighborhood. DM me or your IM me, and let's, and then I'm like, yeah, bring them through. Like,
So for someone like me that, I've done a couple flips, mainly it's been wholesaling, but like when I call real estate agents to network, most of the time I'm pretty good on the phone. So I feel like they're like, okay, this is a seasoned investor. He knows what he's talking about. But most of the time you can tell that they're a little skeptical. Like, am I dealing with someone that, I can trust, that I can bring a deal and actually get it done? You don't really face that anymore, right? Because you've had those relationships.
Yeah, I don't face that too much because I'm in the real estate community, right? I'm well known, like as a real, as being in real estate. I serve on the local association of realtor board, right? So a lot of agents,
right?
What's that?
That must help too, serving on the board and getting well known.
Yeah, get involved, get to know people, because it's all relationships, right? It's all, somebody needs a deal and somebody's talking, like agents talk about everything. So, one agent might say, hey, I got this property, I want to try to double side it myself or double dip it myself, right? Like, and then they'll say, well, call this guy, he's, he might buy, you know what I mean? And that, there's no competition. Like you see it in your business, like, there's nobody's my competition. Like I'm to the point where like I'll buy anything, but I don't like to buy the lowest property values, because I'm competing with more people.
Right.
And I don't like to buy the highest property values because sometimes you can sit on those. I like to buy like the middle of the road sweet spot. And in my market, that's 300,000 to 400,000, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the same with, in Salt Lake City, Utah, like the low end is like 3 to 4 now, and then middle is probably like 4 to 7, and then you got high end. But no, I know what you mean. And plus, we've seen with the higher end, when the interest rates increase, those prices start to drop way faster than, you know, price decreases than the lower end stuff. Those maintain their value a little bit stronger, I feel
Yeah.
like, but more competition, like you said.
Right. Plus, like, you know, there's a little bit of a trick. There's a lot of agents out there that are like REO agents, real estate owned agents. You know, they're representing banks, and those guys, like, you know, those guys know the properties they're going to get way in advance, right? Because to a certain level, they help the bank property manage, you know, secure the property, whatever, and then usually they have their first person who's going to really compensate them on the side or make them a partner off the books, right? And but you know, but like, even me, I can't buy everything. You know what I mean? Like,
You
I don't
wholesale
want
a lot?
to say that again.
You wholesale a lot? Like if an agent brings you something, you're like, this isn't for me, but maybe you know someone in your network that would want it.
I, I usually don't take a fee on that. I usually just say, call this guy, like that might, you know what I mean? Like, I'm to the point where like a couple $1,000 isn't like worth my effort. I hate to say it that way because it's a couple $1,000.
Well, also, I'm sure what goes around comes around. Like you, by just giving back, like, and just, you know, not taking a fee, they might remember you. You know, be like, hey, he sent me deals. I can't take on this one right now. Let me call him.
Well, you know, it's a lot like what you do, Nate. Like, you know, like you have free training for people out there who want to get started, right? And like, you don't charge anything for that. And I really applaud you for that, because like when I started, it was like secretive, you know, like there was like nobody was talking to anybody else. Like everybody was like lack and limitation, no abundance. Today it's like, listen, you're going to help that guy. He's not your competition. He might be in Florida, right? And you know, if you can help him learn, you know, it always comes back to you in one way or another.
And that's been a game changer for me. And we can talk about mindset, because you said you do have 2 certifications, right?
Yeah.
One thing that changed my business and me is when I stopped looking at this business as others as competition, and having a more abundance mentality versus a scarcity mentality. Because when I first started, you know, I was going on appointments myself. I was going to sellers, and I'd hear, oh, I'm talking to 5 other investors, and I would be like, oh man, you know, this is really tough. I got to compete. But then I realized, you know, like there's more than enough deals to go around. And if I'm helpful, that's why I created the Facebook group, because, you know, a lot of people don't know where to go to get information. And I'm like, if I can help people out, it's just going to be better for me too. I mean, everyone wins.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your mindset training. I love Franklin Covey training. We bought, you know, a very expensive course on sales from him, you know, and it's been great. But yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
So when, you know, after my dad passed away, right, like, and I saw people who I thought I had better skill set than, right, and they were much more successful than me. Then I was like, all right, well, what's holding me back? Like, why is that? And like, to me, like, if you start with, okay, well, you know, backing into it, your actions, what you do, create your results, right? Well, what creates your actions are your feelings, and what create your feelings are your thoughts, right? So it boils down to your thoughts. And then I, like, all this stuff, like I did the positive mental attitude training from the Napoleon Hill Foundation, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, like in the 30s. And interestingly, he didn't profit off that book at all. But yeah, he went through a divorce, and then his ex-wife made all the money off the book.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said Franklin Covey. You got it yours in Napoleon Hill. That's
right.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm familiar with Franklin Covey, Stephen Covey. Like, you know, I've read all his stuff, but so to what it boils down to in my head is that if your mind works like this, you're born and you have some pre-wiring, you know, from your DNA, but most of what you learn is all learned behavior, right? And learn thinking. If you look at a kid, you know, if you walked into any like kindergarten class and you asked who here is a really good singer, right? That every kid's going to raise his hand. You go into 8th grade and you ask them who's a really good singer here, like maybe the one kid who's the really good singer, right? So it's all learned stuff, right? And then what happens in your mind is your mind gets programmed, and Anthony Robbins says it like this. Imagine like it's a vinyl record, right? Like, and you take, something and you scratch up the vinyl record. It's never the same. It's kind of, that's exactly what the way the mind works is. The way the mind works is like the mind always reverts back to what's familiar, right? It's your mind, it's born to protect you, right? And so whatever instructions you've given it, it will fulfill those. So the only way to change that is to make what's familiar unfamiliar and something new familiar. And that just takes repetition and, attention to it.
Yeah, no, I'm all about mindset. I'm all about consistency and daily activities, daily actions that will reprogram your brain, like journaling, gratitude, affirmations, things that really like change, I guess, the programming that's in your mind,
Yeah. Yeah, that's hugely important. And the one thing is like, you're very receptive at certain times, right? Like that time, like if you've ever been driving and like, and all of a sudden you're like home or wherever, and, someplace you go, you don't even really remember, like you're sort of like in a hypnotic trance,
Right.
So you're much more receptive to new ideas and to change your thoughts during those times, which are like right before you go to sleep, right before you wake up, or through meditation or through self-hypnosis or whatever. So
yeah. So I wanted to tell you this, not like a confession, but just let you know something that's been difficult for me in my business, whether it's Investor Drive or my wholesaling business. It's like taking action. You say your action is basically what gets you results, and then thoughts, right? But the thing that I found difficult in my life is as I gain more knowledge, I want to do more things. And I feel like I'm being more effective because I'm smarter or I know more things. So I try to do more. And I found that that's been like detrimental or been difficult to grow in my business because, when I first started investing, I did like a couple things and I did them really well. And I did them like consistently. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, well, I can talk to agents. I can get deals. I can also do an email, like a text blast, right? So there's just so many things. So what advice would you give me or anyone watching where it's like, where with all this knowledge is abundant, like how can you focus on things that will get the job done? Like get you.
That's great. I have little kids, right? Like I have a 9, 8, and 5. I had my first kid at 51, right? So I tell my kids, we can do anything. We can't do everything, right? So, and to you, I would say change lanes slowly, right? Keep doing what you're doing because that's where your revenue's coming from. And then just, like spend a little bit of your time. Like I'm very big on planning, right? Like I'm planning out my day, planning out my week, and like, you have to be flexible in this business. So like I block time, but that time block can move around, right? Like, and if I have to shift things around, that's just part of life, right? Like the more flexible you can be, the better off you're going to be. So change lanes slowly. And then just like, so I would say 4 days a week, focus on your main thing. And then 1 day a week, have fun, right? Branch out into those other things and see where that takes you,
Yeah. Cause what I found from talking to you from our limited conversation is just, you focus on, working with agents, and that's kind of like what you do, right? Like they bring you deals and you're like, hey, I don't really need, I'm a lion. Like, you know what you need to do. It's not like it sounds like you kind of have locked in, like, I guess your activities or what you're looking for.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, pretty much I do the same thing every day, and discipline will set you free, right? Like it's like, if I try to teach my kids like routine, like do the same things, like do it like to that it becomes second nature and that you don't have to think about it. And, you just like, and if your thoughts, like if you're a cold caller or whatever, like, and your thoughts are, oh man, like I'm just going to get rejected or whatever, just change your thoughts to say, hey, listen, like I'm going to make 25 calls and I'm going to get 24 no's today. And I'm good with that. Right. Like, because what happens is like, as soon as you hit that one, you get all excited. You're like, I'm ready to make 1,000 more calls. Right. Yeah. But when you get to call 50 and you're like, oh man, this sucks. If it does that, like I always take a break. Like I'll run to the gym in the middle of the day, or I'll like go for a walk, or I'll get a coffee, or whatever it is. Right? Just
It's
take a
good
break.
advice.
Like don't keep banging your head against the wall. Just stop. And but you like everybody's got to know their limitations. And like being older, like you figure out your limitations. It's you know.
Right. Well, I mean, honestly, it's been really insightful and helpful. I guess we can wrap up, but I want to ask you what's one thing you'd like to leave the viewers of Investor Thrive, which are mainly new wholesalers, new investors. What would you like to leave them with?
Just keep going, just keep learning and don't be afraid, you know, the one thing I would say, if you're new and you're wholesaling, throw something out there that says, "Hey, I'm going to have a great wholesale deal coming up. Like any investors out there, hit me up, build your list, right?" And
Mhm.
then call them, have a conversation. Hey, what do you like? And then get your core group, and you're going to change. You're going to change. You're going to change. You're going to do a deal with a guy who's going to be a total jerk. You're like, I'm never working with that guy again. Move on, right? Just keep moving on, keep doing your thing.
That's great advice. So it's like that's an actionable thing that we can have them do. If anyone watching this or will watch this, go out, make a post on a Facebook group or anywhere where you have. I guess you can reach out to investors and say, "Hey, I'm going to have a great deal coming soon. Put your emails below or send me your information. I'll reach out to you and kind of give you some details. Build that core group that you have and kind of find out what they want and almost reverse engineer what they want, and you'll find it."
Yeah, and if you are a real estate agent or whatever, you can do research on that person, you know, like you'll see what properties they've done, and whatever. Like you can search them and then call the agent and say, hey, what's this guy like? Thinking about working with them, and they'll tell you right away. You'll get to know who the good ones are and the bad ones are. Sometimes it'll be painful and sometimes it won't be, but it's part of the process.
For sure. Well, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with? How anyone can reach you if they want to, have a deal in New Jersey or anything?
Yeah, I'll just give you my phone number. Like you could send me a text and we could jump on a call. It's 609 area code 440-8557. And listen, Nate's giving great value. Like, listen, I love the guys that are like doing it and then sharing it. And I really appreciate you're doing that, because me growing up, I didn't have that. I didn't have that. I only had sharks in the water. I didn't have friends.
Yeah, that's unfortunate that it happened to you. And what's honest, I'm pretty transparent with everyone. Like in our business, because things have changed a little bit in the market, we had our acquisition reps were virtual assistants that were good. I mean, they're expatriates, they're good, they're Americans. But now with things changing a little bit, like and buyers being a little bit more hesitant to buy, at least where we're at. Like I'm hopping back into acquisitions of my company just to kind of help out again and actually hop on calls and talk to sellers. So like that's just, you got to pivot. And sometimes you don't want to, go back into certain parts of your business and fix things, but that's what I'm doing. So I'm really in there with people. Like I know what you guys are facing, like, cause I'm talking to sellers like that.
And one last thing, like I never buy a property that I don't have a fallback on, which is like, okay, so if I can't sell it, like the market shifts, sometimes that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the market shifts, like I need to be able to rent it out and I need to be able to make money off of it. So, and like I'll take my own money and then I'll refinance out of it. So I have my money to do another deal. So crunch those numbers, see what your fallback is. Yes. Always have like an exit fallback strategy.
Very, very important. Very important too. Like if I can't wholesale this thing, am I willing to take it down? Do I have a way to, to buy it, like you said, burr out of it, do whatever I need. So awesome.
Because usually I have more than 20% into the property. So when I refinance out, I take all my money out.
Which is, you don't want to leave it in there if you don't have to, right?
Right, exactly. So yeah.
Cool. Well, Rob, I appreciate it. I think this has been awesome. It's been great. And I think we should definitely hop on another one in the future and you just
whenever you want. Yeah, thank you.
All right. You have a good one. All right.
You too.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye, Nate.